Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that. Did you see how many likes Sydney got on her Facebook photo? It wasn't even that cute. Mine was so much cuter. I got 10 likes and she got like 36. She couldn't even afford to shop at Hollister. That was me a couple years ago, honestly believing that I was the center of the universe. And I have a feeling that I'm not the only one that was ever like that. Realization hit me far away from home, far away from English, and far away from anything I found familiar. But my out-of-the-ordinary experience is unfortunately 1,345 million people's reality, according to the World Bank. Poverty is everywhere, and when I experienced a small amount on a Guatemala mission trip, I realized that I am not the center of the universe. Now, between my time on Facebook and texting, I made time to look up the definition of poverty, and Webster's dictionary tells us that poverty is the state or condition of having little or no money, goods, or means of support. Webster is wrong. Poverty is much more abundant, much more commonplace, much more absolute than any few words Webster begins to describe. Poverty that Webster describes is the American poverty, but it exists, not in mass hordes, important, although not like anything what is beyond our border. Personally, I've been on 6 mission trips in the United States and seen poverty, like not what the UNICEF commercials depict. You know, that sad, starving little boy. Even though we're sympathetic, we're just impatiently waiting to get back to Grey's Anatomy. And in the end, we've forgotten all about that sad, dying little boy. UNICEF statistics tell us that 22,000 children die each day due to poverty. We think that we buy our pair of Toms and that we've done our good deed. I was lucky enough to go on a mission trip in San Raimundo, Guatemala. I worked with a kindergarten class teaching 26 kids while proudly wearing my Toms. Over the course of my trip, I realized that my Toms could not fix the universe. The kids that I met could. If only we would ignore Webster's definition of poverty and discover how the 1,345 million impoverished people define poverty. It wasn't poverty to them. It was a way of life. Another way of life was selling goods to tourists. Goods like purses, headbands, fruits, anything that they could possibly sell to make ends meet. The best place to sell these items was Antigua, Guatemala. As we walked through the filth-ridden streets, we witnessed more stray cats and dogs than seen on the ASPCA commercials we see every Tuesday waiting for Glee to come back on. Despite the horrific conditions of these markets, the market stalls that wouldn't meet our building codes, the sewage systems that couldn't even handle toilet paper, and the people with the looks of desperation permanently affixed to their faces. This is their definition of life. And guess what, guys? They don't find themselves to be the center of the universe. They wanted to hold my hand, and when I didn't have an open hand, they would hold on to my arm. They wanted to braid my hair all day long. But I was warned not to let them get too close because most of them had lice. But I had to let them. These 5- or 6-year-old kids assaulted my ears every single morning. When I first walked into the room, they would all shout in unison, "Buenos dias, señor," and gave me a big group hug. They liked me, even though Sydney got more likes on Facebook. The LA Times claims that teens and young adults who log on to Facebook constantly tend to be more narcissistic. While in Guatemala, I didn't have access to a computer, which could explain the change that occurred inside of me. I didn't have time to worry about Sydney or her photo. When playing on the playground, Fatima asked me to pick her up and put her on the slide so she didn't have to climb the stairs. I did it, and the next thing I know, I had a line of kids waiting for me to do it. It made me sweat so much. I mean, some of those kids were heavy. But through the sweat, I realized that what I looked like didn't matter. My hair didn't matter. My makeup didn't matter. Heck, My dental hygiene didn't even matter. Why? Because they didn't know what healthy teeth looked like. The kids kept toothbrushes at the school, and at a class at a time would get their toothbrush from a bin and walk outside to the playground where there was a large sink. The sink was rank with dead flies and bacteria, all because the water was never emptied. My entire trip, the water had never been emptied. These kids are not alone in their need for clean water. The World Health Organization of Unsafe Water tells us that 1.7 billion people lack access to clean water. The same source also tells us that 2.3 billion people suffer from waterborne diseases each year. So think about that next time you change the commercial because some boring Brita commercial's on. Water is necessary to live, but also easy to die from. 300,000 deaths occur by flood each year, according to Kofi Annan. The village I stayed in was not immune to this threat. A large river ran through the town, and the townspeople were typically cautious. One day the river did flood, but before it could destroy the town, a local blind man ran through the streets warning everyone. Because of his sharper senses, he could hear the water coming. Everyone got out of the town safely, but the town needed work. While doing what we could to repair the already mangled houses, a boy about 15 years old comes up to talk to my group. He started to tell us the story of the flood, describing how it all happened. Of course, he only spoke Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. My teacher translated the main points, and I could tell just how bad it really was. Floods happen everywhere. In August of 2010, Pakistan withstood a flood of that the United Nations declared the greatest humanitarian crisis in recent history. With 13.8 million suffering short or long-term losses, these Pakistanians discovered a new definition of life: hope. They lived on only hope in their hearts. Hope that water wouldn't destroy everything that they cherished. The water remained in towns and villages for over 10 days, leaving stagnant water. This stagnant water had the potential to start an epidemic of malaria, allowing mosquitoes a chance to reproduce. Any area with rain puddles, flood water, and excessive amounts of dog water dishes is prone to malaria. While in Guatemala, we were required to bring intense camping spray. Often, the children didn't have that luxury. Once, little Paquito told us a story, and little mosquitoes were flying all around him. They were landing on his eyelashes and on his lips, and one finally landed on his eye, and he didn't even react to the fact that there was a mosquito on his eye. It opened my eyes to see the fact that these people were used to horrible conditions and that this little boy was used to bugs in his eyes. The Centers for Disease Control heavily advises wearing long pants and sleeves in certain towns of Guatemala because of a malaria problem received from those exact mosquitoes. The CDC has also published a list of areas around the globe that have a high malaria threat and suggest similar precautions. Unfortunately, many people living in these mollusca-infested areas can't afford the precautions. They can barely afford to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. Poverty affects everyone. Everywhere, men, women, and children alike suffer from the diseases like malaria associated with poverty. We call it poverty, but they call it life. They feel sorry for us. And I do too. We walk around every day putting ourselves on a high horse and putting our best foot forward. The people in Guatemala live a much simpler life. And I saw more genuine smiles there in 2 weeks than I have in high school in 2 years here. So we've seen how our lives put us in a bubble, an imaginary bubble that allows us to justify apathy. We see the commercials, we buy the shoes, and we post on Facebook how life isn't fair. In the words of the great John Mayer, we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. But if we want change, be the change. Pop the bubble you live in and see how poverty is defined by those who live it.